One of the fascinating things that came out of my research on destiny is a language that we don't normally use in church. It's the term convergence. Convergence is like a place where all of your history, that's the good and the bad, is factored together into the creation of a unique alchemy. It's the story of your gifts, talents, and acquired skills suddenly extrapolated into a role that allows you to be 100% utilizing everything you've got and everything you've been through to do what you were really meant to do with your life. That convergence zone happens in the midst of all kinds of tectonic shakes that are going on in the world. In this particular module, I'm going to talk about the tension that is going on geopolitically, globally, in the news cycle, as tribalism is redefining nations, and nations are being pushed into a globalist empire. And here you are showing up, entering convergence right when history is happening. Couldn't be a better time. And I explain exactly what's happening in the world around you while you're coming into your ultimate assignment. Go to lancewallnau.com/mastery to get all 7 lessons to be able to almost position yourself like a GPS. Where am I now? And where am I going in order to take off into the thing that God has called me to do? lancewallnau.com/mastery. You'll love this particular module. What this Jewish scholar is saying is that what you have, I want you to catch this in your head. You've got the beast system, which is arising, which is, he's not calling it beast because he's not a Pentecostal. He's saying it's empire. But his language helped me understand what the beast is. It's the spirit of expanding the rule and dominion of one group over all other groups for your own benefit and for the benefit of the world. So that's the media narrative. Over on this end, you have tribes, and you have this tribal loyalty. And the problem with tribal loyalty is it leads to anarchy. Why would this lead to anarchy? Because one tribe rules against another tribe. So you got 12 tribes in Israel. And until God consolidated them with a divine moment where Aaron's rod is taken into the temple, even the 12 elders recognize, all right, Moses, he's got something going, but still, I mean, we're all on my own tribe and you're your own tribe, and I should lead. Who should lead? I think I should. No, I think I should. They were all arguing as to who were going to lead. Tribalism leads to anarchy until the rod of everyone's staff was taken into the sanctuary, and overnight they waited. And when they came out the next day, Aaron's rod supernaturally had fruit. Derek Prince, the great Oxford educator, said that it is inevitable that even there are tribes in Christianity. There's the Baptist, the Pentecostal, their First Assembly of God, the megachurch, the Gateway is not this church, But what unifies them is supernatural attestation. It's God's hand on you. And so Aaron's rod was the only one that was a dead stick that had living leaves on it. And when they all examined it, they said, who's this, who's this? And they all had their name on the stick. So how did God solve the problem? Disunity was solved by who was anointed. And the anointing organizes the tribes. So you have anarchy over here, tribal loyalty. Now this is what the left wants to do in Marxism. It has the heterosexual against the homosexual, and then you've got Latinos that are fighting against whites, whites against black lives matter as all whites are basically suppressing. So it's creating tribalism out of what was once unified. In the middle, between the two, is the nation state. Now you got to see how this works. This is where the beauty of this man's research is. You've got the beast over here, which is total power and assimilation, taking over all tribes, all nations into the system. Then you have anarchy. You've got Saudi Arabia fighting with Islam, that was fighting with Iran, which is fighting with Syria, which is fighting with Turkey. So the problem with Islam is it's tribal. It's Sunni and it's Shiite. The nation state is God's solution to the difference between the beast or tribal anarchy. And at this point in the middle is where you can actually bring the tribes together with a common language and a common geography and a common faith and say, this is who we are. So much so that you're willing to go to war for your nation, even though your tribe is over here. You're willing to work together to save your nation because you identify here, not here. So listen to how he explains it now that you've seen it. Anarchy and empire are each based on a principle of immense plausibility. The loyalty to familiar individuals that characterizes the anarchy of tribes, and the unity of mankind on the other. We all have something in common, in terms of from heaven's perspective. Nevertheless, when either one is permitted to exceed its proper place and embrace this primarily ordering principle, is the primary principle of the political world, it quickly engenders not the freedom of people, but in every case, their subjugation and enslavement. Either one, on either extreme, it will put you under their tribe and make you a slave of their tribe, or it'll put you under their empire and make you a servant to the emperor. Only this allows for maximum personal human flourishing and freedom, which is why this movement towards this global soup is not so smart to the Jewish people that are saying, let's think about this. So it quickly engenders the freedom of people, but their enslavement. Just as empire tends towards the enslavement of peoples to the customs and ideals of a ruling nation, so too does anarchy tend towards the enslavement to an endless strife among local strongmen competing for tribal power. Empire and anarchy are the horns of a dilemma that's dogged mankind's steps since antiquity. The 12 tribes of Israel, and then Syria or Persia or Rome. So it's the earliest political images of the Bible, the story of the Tower of Babylon, for example, in which the leadership of the city was sought to unite. So this Babel was the first effort at global empire. And trying to force everyone into one language and one community. And one purpose. And then you've got the story of Noah's Ark, a tiny familiar community cast out of a violent, anarchic mankind. It gives a sense of how deeply these two evils impressed themselves on the thought of our forefathers. And indeed, the problem of empire and anarchy, the problem of these two choices, is central to the political teaching of Hebrew Scripture. What the prophets of Israel proposed, this is so interesting, and what the Peace of Westphalia ended up affirming after Luther did the Reformation, is this. I have said that under empire, the loyalty of the individual is supposed to be directed towards humanity as a whole, whereas in an anarchy order, it's devoted to the politically independent family or clan. What here is proposed is an order in which loyalty is turned toward an institution that sits precisely at the conceptual midpoint between the two extremes. By nation, I mean the number of tribes that have a shared heritage, and usually including a common language or religious tradition, a shared sense of what is sacred, and a history of joining together against common enemies on the outside. And so by a national state or a nation state, I mean a nation whose disparate or different tribes have come together under a single standing government independent of all other governments. What does it mean to say that the nation state sits at the conceptual midpoint between empire and anarchy? In the first place, a nation state rules over the families and clans, whereas an empire rules over the nations. The national state is midway between the family and the imperial state in terms of scale. And this point is the place where you provide the maximum connectivity for individuals, local families, tribes, common faith, and physical borders to identify with one another in an entity where they could experience the blessing and prosperity of liberty and autonomy from control. Do you ever get the feeling that you're kind of stuck? You're not seeing the pieces come together. We look at transformation as though it's an event. It's actually a sequence of events. It's a journey that you're on. LanceWallnau.com/mastery is a 7-part series of the 40 years of the most important insights I've seen work in the lives of successful entrepreneurs and people of high impact. I want you to get a hold of the entire 7 modules, LanceWallnau.com/mastery. You'll be glad you did it. That's why Satan wants to take out nation states. But I'm pointing it out because you never hear this taught. So when Jesus says, go make disciples of nations, it's like, well, what does that mean? He's talking about go make, because if they aren't discipled, if they aren't brought to a place of vitality here, then the empire system is going to assimilate them. you're living in the battle between this and this right now, and Christians don't know this is what they're called to disciple and defend. They're not even aware it's going on. They're checked out into another conversation. So having said that, the principle I'm looking for is that a nation that has the cohesiveness and strength to maintain independence and self-government can withstand the siren songs and seductions of empire, resist the forces of Antifa anarchy, and be able to reinforce itself as an entity that is blessed by God. So when Jesus has, when the word for Sarah and Abraham is that you'll have nations for your inheritance, obviously it's not the beast as the inheritance, and obviously it's more sophisticated than just a tribe in the Sudan. It's kings shall come forth from you, or government leaders of nation states. So I wanted to throw that out there because I don't think we understand where the beast fits in and how it fits in, and how Marxism is the dismantling of a nation state into tribalism. Pitting us, it's trying to move us into tribalism so we're weak as a nation state so we can be assimilated by empire. So this fragmenting of American culture, this divisive, acidic narrative that is constantly being put out there about race and gender and about right-wing extremism, about white Christian nationalism, it's the devil producing tribalism, people against people. The founding fathers took 13 separate tribes called states and unified them into one entity called the United States. So literally our name is there as the bringing together of 12 or 13 tribes into one identity, and then we just expanded from there. And what did we defeat? The British Empire. We defeated the spirit of it. It's in our DNA to have freedom, to fight empire. That's your ultimate DNA, and it's because of the gospel. It's because of the infusion of the Great Awakening and Protestant values that we have this strength of the individual against the collective. So I just got to say that you got to have that. So where are the nations that you're leading in your level 10 leadership? We're talking about a leadership university here. So where does the nation call and leadership converge? If you go to Matthew 25, I told you earlier the Great Commission is, go make disciples of nations. But I haven't heard much taught about this. Matthew 25, I noticed like Derek Prince, Gordon Lindsay, various people would talk about the ultimate state of things. If the beast is over here, this produces the goat nations. This produces sheep nations. The final battle is going to be between these two. The nations that resist assimilation and the system that demands conformity. This is why the Davos crowd, the European Union, global climate, COVID, are all the tools of the empire spirit trying to break down your individual rights as a nation and your individual rights as an individual, as a person. So you got to see how this goes. I'm going to talk to you about the goats and the sheep right now and clarify this a little further. When the Son of Man comes in his glory with all his angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him. I'm reading from the American Standard Version here. I've got a King James. I could use that. But he will separate them. He's gathered all the nations. He separates them, the nations, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Interesting idea here. This is a lot we could unpack there, but there was something prepared in the beginning at the foundation, which is where you get the word like, the root of it is like katabana or something, which has to do with the casting down of former inhabitants. Foundation refers literally to the casting down of Satan's control over the earth and the establishment of a new earth. From the very casting down of Lucifer and his control over this earth and the God recreating the earth and putting man and woman in the earth over it, from that moment, God was preparing the kingdom. He already knew the end from the beginning. And so he saw where this was going to go. And all the way from the foundation of the world, God had prepared the idea of a kingdom and what he was going to do. Jesus says, come and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the very foundation of the world. For this is a very mischievous passage, because I heard it preached wrong. Anytime you want to take an offering for, the poor, people bring this verse out, and a whole bunch of people that are taught justification by faith. You're saved by faith alone and not by works. They freak out because now the preacher is going to start a sermon about, I was hungry and you didn't feed me, I was in prison and you didn't go. And they're going to take up an offering. Everyone's going to give money because they're afraid they might not be saved if they don't do something. So think of how ridiculous this is. You're either saved by faith or you're not, but this teaching gets distorted. Here's what Jesus says. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. And the righteous will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or feed you or give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you to come in naked or clothe you? When did we ever see you sick or in prison? This is all Jesus is preaching. You can imagine how he's preaching this. It must be very dramatic, like he goes through every category. And the king will answer and say to them, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did it to me. And then he will also say to those on his left, depart from me, you accursed ones, into the eternal fire that was prepared for the devil and his angels. Because when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was sick, you didn't And so, verse 45, then he answered and said, truly I say to you, to the extent that you didn't do it to one of the least of these, you didn't do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Jesus is talking about when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations are gathered before him. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, this is pretty significant, because the final iteration I can see of nations is apparently nations. In the book of Revelation, it's all about kings and nations. You see it's sheep nations and goat nations. And I'm very interested, and I've taken time to show you, the 7 mountains of culture is what determines the strength of your nation state. So if you don't have control of religious freedom, if you don't have an education system that isn't propagandizing your youth, if you don't have a government that's enforcing laws to support you, if you don't have culture where the believers are exerting this influence, they will succumb to collapsing to the beast system. But if you're vigilant here, your nation state can stay strong enough to retain its freedom. That's the premise. That's why I want you to catch these ideas. So where else are you going to get a worldview that talks about empires and tribes and the emerging beast system and the battle over nations? It's right here in this curriculum, and I'm so thankful that you stuck with me to the end on this. Listen, knowing where you're at in history and knowing what you're called to do is all part of the secret sauce of working out your own calling. You don't want to be redundant. You don't want to just do what you thought you were supposed to do 10 years ago. You need to update your worldview as to who you are today and who God's calling you to be tomorrow. That's what this course is all about. LanceWallnau.com/mastery is how you make that distinction between who you were and who you're becoming. LanceWallnau.com/mastery. And I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.